5 Live Formula One.
Hello and welcome back to the Chequered Flag podcast, and we come to you straight after the final qualifying of the season. Abu Dhabi qualifying is done and dusted. We have our grid for the final race of the season, and it is Max Verstappen who clinched pole position, his 12th pole of the year, and he will line up alongside the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc. Joining me to debrief all things qualifying and have a little look ahead to Sunday's Grand Prix is W Series race winner Alice Powell. And Alice, well, Verstappen, he did it when he needed to.
Oh, he did. We were trying desperately not to fall into this trap, weren't we, after free practice and getting all excited and thinking, oh, we might have another different pole sitter or race winner. But Red Bull and Max pulled it out the bag from their pace that they had in the free practice sessions across the entire weekend. They've done a great job, and normal service resumes for Max, starting on pole position once again, and surprisingly actually challenged by Charles Leclerc, because the Ferraris looked like they were having a little bit of a struggle. But yeah, never write off Max, as I often get reminded by
it's the
Jolyon
hope that kills you every time.
And Andrew Benson. Yeah, it does every time. But no, an impressive job by Max and Red Bull.
Yeah, in the end, less than a tenth and a half, splitting Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc. Verstappen, even up until FP3, complaining about the bouncing of his car, just wasn't happy with that Red Bull at all. But then pretty much straight into qualifying, looked like one of the fastest drivers out there, and indeed he will start from pole position. It will be his 12th pole of the season, and in terms of all-time rankings, that puts him up to 32 career poles, one less than Alain Prost, before he breaks into the top 5 of the all-time charts. And you know, we can reel off these stats, but what they underline, I should say, is a record-breaking season continues to be set right up until the final checkered flag.
Yeah, no, Max, he's just had a great year, hasn't he? He's been on fire. When you could chuck anything at Max and Red Bull, Zandvoort springs to mind, which you've mentioned before, Harry, and they still come out on top. Okay, Singapore was a disaster for Max, really finishing down in 5th. But then if you look at his stats, and I'm not going to go through all the races, but he's finished off the podium once, and that was Singapore. Other than that, he's either won or finished second, and he's only finished second twice, and that was at Saudi and in Baku.
Yeah, well, going for his 19th win of the season for Sunday's Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. Let's hear what he had to say after securing pole.
So, Max, there's been points this weekend where you've just looked like a world of pain. It's been really difficult. So how do you turn it around in qualifying to nail it up when it really matters?
Good team effort, I guess, after FP3 as well. You know, a lot of guys, just trying to find improvements, and then the car was set up in a better direction for me to push more and feel better in it.
Does that give you confidence then tomorrow you'll be able to hold off the Ferraris, hold off the McLarens, and really push for the win?
Yeah, I haven't done any long runs, so it's a bit difficult to say at the moment, but normally from what I felt so far, I have had the best balance all weekend, so that normally then helps also for the long run. Verstappen
then on pole, and as we said, he really came to the fore in the closing stages. I mean, you can never rule Max Verstappen out. Of course you can't in this season of Formula One. But what changes would they have made then, Alice, to that car to try and settle it down a bit and to get him happier with that Red Bull? Because, I mean, the way it was going, we heard on the radio, Christian Horner won €500 against Helmut Marko.
And if I was Max, I'd be like, hey, come on, where's my cut of that?
Exactly. We should say the bet was for Verstappen being on the front row. So
yeah, and,
can you believe they're even
certainly
betting
did that? I mean, there's plenty of changes you can make, but with the bouncing, that could be, depending on where it is in the corner, the damping or the springs can make a big difference to that. I did notice Max also complain a little bit about some understeer, so front wing changes or rear wing changes, depending on other balances around the track. So there's plenty of things that they can, of course, change, but whatever they did change has certainly improved, unless they were just playing us all along and they thought, oh, we'll let people get their hopes up and we'll just swan on into qualifying and we'll try a little bit harder. Doubt it. But yeah, they certainly tried to fool us at some point, and normal service, as I said, has resumed for Red Bull.
Well, on the other side of the Red Bull garage, Sergio Perez has been looking closer to Verstappen in recent times and has been within a few tenths of him all weekend long. But when you look at the grid, you'll see Sergio Perez starts 9th at best, pending any penalties. And that is because he was faster than that, but track limits comes into play here in Abu Dhabi, and he got his lap time deleted. So Perez will start further down the field, down in 9th. So again, work to do for Perez, but his form, Alice, has been looking better. So do you expect him to be able to cut through the field and try and get up into those podium places in the race?
You would say so. He should, in theory. But there's a lot of battling going on, and he's starting some. Okay, Piastri at the time of recording is under investigation for impeding Gasly, so there's a potential penalty there. But Hülkenberg, it's the last races of the season, isn't it? And some people have things to fight for, like Tsunoda up against Williams. So you would say he needs to try and have a decent result. So he's not going to want to challenge too much. Norris, he'll certainly feel, well, I missed out on pole position. I'm sure we're going to touch on that a little bit later. So he's going to want to move forward. Russell, he needs to try and get ahead of Leclerc. So it's not going to be easy for Perez and quite simple to carve his way through. We've got 2 DRS zones, of course. One on the exit of turn 5 into turn 6 down that very long straight. And then immediately after, we've got the final DRS zone from turn 7, so out of that chicane down into turn 9. So there is overtaking opportunities at this circuit, and we've certainly seen many overtakes here in the past couple of years. So it's possible, but it's not going to be easy for Sergio, just because of those important battles that are carrying on into the final stages of the race.
Well, that's Red Bull. Let's move on to Ferrari, as Charles Leclerc lines up on the front row in second alongside Verstappen. And that, you have to say, was a little bit of a surprise, because Ferrari had been looking a bit on the back foot, especially with the other Ferrari, Carlos Sainz, out in Q1. Where did that lap come from for Leclerc?
Good question, because you said it in comms. You were like, out of nowhere, Leclerc pops up into second, and he was really struggling. He was on the radio saying, I thought that was a good lap. This is his first run in Q3. He's like, I thought it was a good lap. You know, that felt good, but the time's just not there. And Sainz is struggling down in 16th, didn't even make it out of Q1. I think that they may have made a cheeky little change at some point. They're limited with changes that they can make in qualifying, but made a quick maybe change of a front wing adjustment somewhere along the line, or rear wing adjustment to help them. But he pulled it out, and fair play to him, because the only session they really sort of looked, you could say, proper good in was, yeah, the free practice 1, they look pretty handy. Free practice 2 looked okay, but then in free practice 3 they had a nightmare. But and in all through qualifying it wasn't looking great. So a good job from Charles Leclerc popping up a lap time out of there.
Well, it's inverted, isn't it, from this time last week with Las Vegas, where Leclerc was on pole, Verstappen alongside, and Verstappen chucked it down the inside. And there was a bit of chit-chat about him having to give that position back during the race. He got a 5-second time penalty for it. Is Leclerc going to be thinking about a dive down the inside into turn 1 for Abu Dhabi?
The difference here compared to Vegas, and I'm going to use Sao Paulo as well, there was as an example, those two circuits, the nature of turn 1 is different. It's harder to throw one down the inside here at Abu Dhabi. It's a sort of, you say, 90-degree left-hander, but it's still a fairly quick left-hander for these Formula 1 cars. So it's going to be hard for Leclerc. And going on the past races, Max Verstappen's got his starts absolutely nailed, whereas Ferrari not so much. So unless something drastically goes wrong for Max off the line, it's going to be hard for for Charles to dive down the inside. Charles got to look over his shoulder, really, because you've got to have Piastri, if he doesn't get a penalty, he's going to be feeling pretty racy, and Russell and particularly Norris too.
Well, let's hear what Leclerc, who starts second, had to say after qualifying.
I'm very surprised. I am very surprised because I didn't really not expect to be on the front row for tomorrow. We've had a very difficult FP3. FP2 was okay. We were on top of the timesheet, but for me that didn't mean anything. It was only one lap, and so yeah, in Q1, Q2 we struggled a lot. We put 2 new sets of soft to get out of Q1, which we did by a fine margin. And Q2, again it was quite tight, and then Q3 I just went all in, and it seems to have worked. So really happy to be starting second tomorrow.
How do you feel about your prospects of winning tomorrow? This hasn't been the strongest weekend so far for Red Bull. I know the McLarens look quick as well, and you guys in patches have looked good as well.
Yeah, I mean the Red Bull will be quick tomorrow, I'm sure. The McLaren will be very strong tomorrow, I'm sure. Yeah, let's see. I don't really know what to expect. I just hope we can beat Mercedes in the constructors, and that's all that matters to me.
Leclerc then starts in second alongside Verstappen. As we've mentioned, his teammate Carlos Sainz, struggling for pace, will start down in 16th spot at best, barring any penalties. He's going to have work to do. He had 2 races on the trotway he's had to overcome. Well, Vegas was a grid penalty that put him back, but this one looked really that it was just pace. He has said since, and I'm sure we'll hear from him before the race, that he blamed traffic, but we saw in FP3 as well that he wasn't particularly on pace, particularly in that final sector.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good old excuse, is that traffic card. That's one that I've certainly used, I have to admit, several times, and many drivers that I've helped at the past, and then you look at the footage and you say, traffic? What traffic? And in the heat of the moment, you do think that someone has impeded you, and then when you watch the footage afterwards, you're like, okay, maybe not. From the footage that we got to see, didn't look like he was really impeded. He clearly feels that he was, but I just think it was lack of pace for Carlos Sainz in his Ferrari today.
And bigger picture here, of course, this is a battle between Ferrari and Mercedes for second in the constructors. Mercedes currently in second with a 4-point advantage over Ferrari. So really, both teams have kind of got one arm tied behind their back, with Hamilton down in 11th and Sainz down in 16th, whereas Leclerc is up in second and Russell is up in fourth position. So it's going to be crucial for Leclerc to hold on and stay in front of Russell, and for Sainz to cut through that pack.
Yeah, I mean, that's helped Sainz a little bit that Hamilton is down in 11th. But again, it's going to be a tough job to cut through the pack. We've seen a couple of years, I mean, at the F2 sprint race that we had today, there was a couple of incidents at the start. You need to try and keep your nose clean. It's a long race, but again, it's not going to be plain sailing to cut through. He should cut through, you could say, in theory, seeing his teammates qualified in second place, so the car's there, but he's struggling for him at the moment, so yeah, it's not going to be plain sailing.
Well, while we're on that, with the Mercedes, let's go there next. George Russell qualified in fourth, and Lewis Hamilton knocked out on pure pace in Q2, starts 11th at best. But actually, Russell looks like he's had the pace on Hamilton throughout the weekend so far. Hamilton not happy with that Mercedes car.
No, he's made it quite clear, and he actually said before qualifying, or before today, so Friday evening, he said, I'll be lucky to get out of Q1, and their pace didn't look too bad from Russell today, especially in free practice 3.
I love how we heard that, and we went, yeah, whatever, Lewis.
We did, and he did. He made it out of Q1. Okay, not quite into Q3, but yeah, he's not feeling it in that Mercedes at the moment, and he did expect Ferrari to be further ahead of them, so it's probably nice for Hamilton to see Sainz behind him, but of course Hamilton's not going to be pleased with where he's starting.
No, not at all, because he's in that kind of zone where collisions can happen in that mid-pack. He's starting around the two Alpines, the Aston Martin has Stroll behind him as well. So Hamilton well and truly in that mid-pack, with George Russell getting a better starting position. Of course, he likes this track, does George Russell. Here back in 2018, clinched the Formula 2 championship, and by out-qualifying Lewis Hamilton, they actually tie in the qualifying head-to-head. So although in the overall driver standings it looks a little different with Hamilton outclassing Russell, certainly when it comes to qualifying head-to-heads, pretty even as it stands. Russell in fourth. He'll start behind Oscar Piastri in the McLaren, the Australian rookie. He will be Rookie of the Year. We will talk more about that next. Welcome back to the Checkered Flag podcast. We are debriefing the final qualifying of the year in Abu Dhabi ahead of the final race of the season for the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, and what will bring to an end a 22 race season with the calendar ever expanding. And it's been a rookie season to remember for Oscar Piastri in that McLaren. The Aussie rookie starts third for the Grand Prix, and we were actually looking more at his teammate in this session, but we'll talk about Norris later. Piastri first of all, a sublime lap from him. Yeah, I was impressed. He did a good job, and Lando. Now, we've seen this before. I'm going off a little bit of a tangent here, but we've seen before that Norris. Here we go. Join in. We've seen that Norris, it tends to make these kind of mistakes, and the mistake that he made in this session was on the exit of turn 13. He got all out of shape, just overdrove basically, was a bit too keen with the gas, and the rear of the car said no thank you, got totally sideways, lost him a good chunk of time, so wasn't able to improve. But we've seen these kind of mistakes from Lando when Piastri's pressuring him, when Piastri's like half a tenth off or maybe faster than him. So that'll be something that I'm sure Norris, he might not agree with me here, but I'm sure that Norris will want to work on over the winter, because ultimately Norris has been the faster driver. Okay, he's the more experienced driver, but Piastri's really challenged him. Yes, Oscar did a lot of track time in the Alpine during his off-season, after he won the Formula 2 title in 2021. He did a lot of track time in the Alpine, which is why Alpine were frustrated. Otmar made it clear the amount of money that they spent on putting Oscar in the Alpine to do testing. But still, it's different when you come here on a race and there's lots of little things to deal with, there's other cars on track, for example. But Oscar's done a great job, but there's not that much pressure on him. He is the rookie coming in. So, cut a long story short, yeah, it was a good effort from Oscar Piastri. It certainly was. His third top three star of the season for Oscar Piastri, and it's actually the first time Lando Norris has been out-qualified by a teammate around this circuit. So, let's hear what they both had to say, starting with Oscar Piastri.
Oscar, after the difficulties in qualifying in Vegas, how good was it to get a smoother session and such a great result at the end of it?
Yeah, very satisfying. It's been a much better weekend in terms of pace as a team, but I've been struggling to just get laps together. Even my side, the pace has been good. Just I've been making big mistakes in every lap, so to have cleaned it up mostly into qualifying was nice. Still a couple of small things to adjust and tweak, but I think everyone can say the same.
Cleaned it up at the right time, at least. Heading into the race tomorrow, the car has looked good around here in all kind of conditions. That must give you a load of confidence that podium's on the cards tomorrow.
Yeah, I think we can fight for a podium, definitely. Nobody knows what the race pace is like, so hopefully we can be strong.
Hey, Orlando, you look so quick out there, and aside from that moment where you just lost it, kind of how are you feeling right now? Thought pole could have been on the cards?
No, terrible. I should be... I don't care where I should be. I made a mistake and ruined my day.
How good did the car feel up until that point?
Great. Yeah, it was really good.
And what do you think you can fight back tomorrow in tomorrow's Grand Prix?
I don't know. I just hope I can fight back. The car's easily quick enough, so... another Saturday ruined.
So two slightly differing stories there for the two McLaren drivers. Oscar Piastri will start the Grand Prix from third position, while Lando Norris starts in fifth. And again, looking bigger picture, Alice, this is important for McLaren at least, because although frustration for Norris, they are both in front of the Aston Martins, and McLaren and Aston Martin involved in a fight for fourth in the constructors. Just 11 points separate them between McLaren and Aston Martin, who are kind of, the momentum's a bit equal at the moment, I think it has to say. It was for a while in the mid-season with McLaren, but Aston Martin starting to come back at them in the last few races. So what can we expect to see from the McLarens in the race?
Well, if you, I could say, look at the long runs, averages from the practice sessions, not many people actually took part in doing any real long runs, because we had that disrupted free practice 2 session with Carlos Sainz and Hülkenberg making a trip into the barriers. But those who did, Norris, the McLarens look okay, to be honest, with their long runs. Don't have any real data from the Red Bulls, but we expect them to be fairly quick. The 6 laps that Leclerc did, he did it on the softs. He seems to be a little bit slower than Norris. So potentially there is that's a good sign, of course, for McLaren. But like you touched on, they need to outscore the Aston Martins. Alonso's sitting down in 7th, and then Stroll, a disappointing one for him, down in 13th place. So as long as those two keep out of trouble and sort of stay relatively where they are, then of course they will beat Aston Martin in the constructors, which is big money.
It certainly is. Tens of millions of dollars splitting those constructors' championship positions. And we go a little bit further down in the constructors. If we talk about this battle for 7th between Williams and AlphaTauri, and then Alfa Romeo and Haas, the minnows of the teams all fighting for that huge prize money. Great qualifyings from Yuki Tsunoda and the AlphaTauri to get 6th, and Nico Hülkenberg and the Haas getting 8th. And if they finish where they started, that would mean AlphaTauri would jump Williams in the standings, and it would also mean Haas jump Alfa Romeo in the standings. So that's got to buoy the team effort for just qualifying. But of course, they've got to convert it in the Grand Prix.
They have. I mean, it's been a torrid day, hasn't it, really, for Alfa Romeo, down in 18th, 19th place. Only Sargent behind those two drivers, because he got both his lap times deleted in Q1. So yeah, potential if they do have a good result. Hülkenberg, they're really relying on. He's starting in 8th, so he is in the points. Magnussen's got some work to do. But yeah, that battle there between AlphaTauri and Williams, as you touched on. Tsunoda, he's pulled it out the bag in qualifying 6th place for tomorrow's Grand Prix. So he's looking pretty good and pretty strong. And I would say it was disappointing from Albon. We thought he was going to be a little bit further up the field. So he's down in 14th place. So yeah, points to be won and places to be gained, and also money to be achieved as well.
Yeah, well, the top 10 is Verstappen, Leclerc, Piastri, Russell, Norris, the top 5, Tsunoda, Alonso, Hülkenberg, Perez and Gasly, the top 10 for Sunday's Grand Prix as it currently stands. Worth bearing in mind, though, we are recording this as Oscar Piastri is under investigation for impeding Pierre Gasly during that session, so it might well switch around, but stay tuned to the BBC Sport website to get all the latest on that. My thanks to Alice Powell. I've been Harry Benjamin. You can join us both and Jenny Gow for full race coverage of the final Grand Prix of the year on 5 Sports Extra. Coverage begins at 12:45, lights out from 1 o'clock Sunday afternoon. Max Verstappen looking to increase records, break records and set new ones to try and take his 19th win of the season. Will he do it? I hope you can join us for it. This has been an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live.